to this computer. Perfect. Okay, welcome, welcome. I'm Victoria Alexander, and thank you. Oh, good. Here's some more people trip trickling in. The first thing I like to go over is some housekeeping items, which is you can ask questions in the chat. I'm going to say hi right now in the chat. My trusty co-presenter Farah is not here tonight, so she cannot be putting the links in there, but you will get some emails afterwards, one directly from me, but then one through, sort of MailChimp platform. So make sure you put info at Realty Collective in your inbox because that's where we'll be sending our Buying into Brooklyn book and all this other stuff. So make sure you be on the lookout for those because that's where we'll send all the juicy resources. Um, You'll also be emailed a recording. So if you missed this or you want to share this with somebody, and we also are going to put it on Spotify. So if somebody wants to listen, because we have some great graphics, but they're really, not content heavy. They're mostly visual. So you'll be hearing mostly from us about the important parts of this. And then I'm going to send you a link to sign up to talk to any of us afterwards, because that's the most important thing. We're happy to reach out and talk to us for free and understand your situation and help you if it's not now's not the right time, get you on a path to making sure that you reach this goal. And also the last thing I always like to plug is my women-owned business blog. We like to highlight women businesses, especially ones here in Brooklyn. So if you are one or know somebody, please message me. I will send it over in the chat later also or in the follow-up email so that you can submit for our blog poster because we have amazing SEO. And I always like to uplift other women's voices. And it's nice to be on another all-women team representing Buying into Brooklyn. So I'm Victoria Alexander. I own Realty Collective, a boutique firm I started 21 years ago to defy the stereotypes associated with real estate brokers, which is crazy to say out loud. And my job is really your matchmaker, your coach, your person to hold your hand on this wild roller coaster of emotional and financial decisions that happen before you. And that's really literally is just to be your guide. And then you have two other people. These are the three people you need for your team. I'm going to turn it over and let them introduce you. Christine, you're the one of the phone calls you have to make initially off the bat. So would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Wong. I am a New York real estate attorney. You will need me to finalize your contract and make sure that at the end of the day, you actually legally own the property that you're looking to buy, that the deed is in your name, the stock certificate is in your name, depending on what you're buying. Um, I am a lifelong New Yorker, and I have worn every hat there is in New York City real estate. I have bought and sold co-ops and condos myself. I have been a landlord. I have been a renter. Um, I have owned both a co-op, a condo, and a house, all in New York. So I have kind of been through all the different stages and steps. And I have been in everyone's position. I completely sympathize. It's a little bit of a crazy process to buy in New York, but I bring that experience and expertise with me to help make your process as smooth as possible.
Take it away, Amy.
Perfect. I'm Amy Ruiz. I'm a mortgage loan officer with Citizens Bank. I've been here about 6 years and I deal almost exclusively with New York City. So I am doing condos and co-ops, lots of new development, which we have lots of in Brooklyn, and multifamily homes every single day. I have seen it all. My role in the process is to meet with you and help you get pre-approved, which basically means that I am looking at your income, making sure that you are going to meet qualification, that you have the cash to close, and that you've got some post-closing reserves. So that you can put in an offer with confidence. And then once you have that accepted offer, we are then going to get you to the closing table, get you underwritten, and get the building approved and get you on your way to getting your keys.
Very well said. And so I just want to say a couple things about the workshop. This is not comprehensive. We only have an hour. There is so much information, but this is going to give you a nice overview of what the process will be like step by step if everything goes smoothly. And working with people like us, that's the whole point is to make sure that everything goes smoothly. You want to work with people that are going to make, everybody hears the horror stories like New York City real estate is stressful. Not when you work with this team. I never have hiccups. One of the things that I will say that when you are picking your teammates here, because this is the team, you're building your team. It's like baseball, right? Is that you want to pick people that have been doing this a long time. Don't hire your friend that just got their real estate license, that just, that's a lawyer, but is also dabbling in like divorce and, other things. You want people that are experts. They're doing co-op and condo and 1 to 4 family house closings on a daily basis. It's their bread and butter for lawyers. And same thing with mortgages. You do not want to be hiring Quicken or Rocket Mortgage or any of these AI platforms. You want a real person because real estate in New York City is complicated, and you want people that are experts at this so they are prepared for when the thing could go off the rail. They're making sure it doesn't before you even know about it because they are so primed and they're such experts in the field, is that they can foresee what could possibly happen. And that's just not going to happen when you're dealing with somebody that's doing houses in like Utah. Like New York City is very special. So those are things, there's some tips on like when you're interviewing people. And the other thing is you about having people that work a long time in the industry is another like very important part, because it's so lovely when I send out deal sheets, right? And Christine knows the other lawyer on the other end because we're all doing transactions together all the time. And when I'm showing a house and a broker comes in and I know that other broker and they put an offer in and their offer is just as competitive as another one, I know that other broker and they're going to make sure that they are going to get their client to the closing table and what working has like been with them in the past. And so it's a really good measure of saying, oh, this person knows everybody. Their name is recognizable. They've been doing this a long time and still doing it. That's the kind of person that I know should be advocating for me because it really means a lot. It really means a lot. So, the first step is when you're before you start looking on the internet is building your dream team. And the first call you have to make really is to your mortgage professional, finding out what your buying power is and what you're going to get pre-approved for. Because the worst thing to do is to go out and see something and then realize you can't afford it. And so I'm going to let Amy, what happens? Somebody's like, okay, I'm ready to buy, Amy. What's the first thing you talk about with people?
Yeah, so I will usually when I do an intake, I ask people, what are you looking for? And let's talk about what you do for a living, and then, kind of what your circumstances are and how I can help you. So I like to listen and hear what someone does for a living. Are they self-employed? Are they a W-2 employee? Are they an hourly employee? Where is my income coming from? That's really important to understand because lots of times people will just in an application put down whatever their expected bonus is, but it hasn't been paid yet, or what their most recent bonus was, not realizing that we actually average a 2-year history. So there's a lot of details that we get into. Um, that aren't going to necessarily come across if you're just applying through like an AI lender or something like that, that are really, really critical to that income calculation. So we go through income and make sure that we feel really good and really solid about those numbers. We look at pay stubs, we look at, W-2s, tax returns, all those types of things, depending on exactly what that person's situation is. So it's very customized to you and your specific situation. Then we look at cash to close. Have you been saving? Are you getting a gift from your parents? What circumstances are you going to have post closing? Are you going to have enough liquidity for your co-op? Are you going to meet the reserve requirement for the bank? Typically, I will tell you that the co-ops are actually more strict than the banks are. So that's something to just kind of keep in mind. And so we look at that, and then people will tell me all about, sort of weird circumstances. For example, like I took a 6-month break because I was on a non-compete. Well, guess what? That's an exception actually for all lenders. That's a big deal and something you want to deal with up front. So you would, someone in my position is going to go to management and say, hey, this person had a non-compete. How are we going to treat their income calculation? So knowing these things and having a personal conversation is really, really important. Looking at documents is really important. Never just issuing a pre-approval just based on like on an application that came in without, getting some supporting documentation. So those are things that are really, really important to do with a loan officer, so that you really have confidence in what those calculations are. And there aren't surprises when you get to underwriting that, hey, like this thing isn't going to count. And knowing upfront what potential, things could shift and understanding like, hey, I might need a co-signer. And having that conversation before you even submit an offer and getting that person on board. So that, so there's a lot of different really high value things that will come out of that initial consult. And then once we've got you all situated, we get you that pre-approval so that you can go ahead and then Victoria can take you and take you to your showings and you can make those offers with full confidence.
Yeah. And it's really important because, people ask, what are you pre-approved for, right?
Mhm.
And the other buyers on the other brokers on the other end of the deal, when you're going to make an appointment, they want to make sure that you have a fully vetted and educated buyer and that you're not just grabbing somebody off the internet. This is a question I get a lot. Oh, do they have their pre-approval? Oh, do they have their, people want to make sure that you're not wasting their time, right? And make sure that you're fully vetted. And so that's an important first step, but it's also an important first step because what if you show up and you absolutely love the apartment and then 10 other people are there? And if you didn't have your pre-approval, even if Amy could turn it around in a 2 or 3 days, or 24 hours, right? She's a miracle worker. She get your pre-approval in 24 hours. You will be scrambling and stressing to make sure that you have everything aligned to get that offer in and compete against everybody else. That is why it's so important. You're going to have a stress-free real estate experience if you listen by being proactive and taking these steps, because you know how crazy New York City life is. Let's not, be scrambling and making everything more stressed out. And that is why, the first call, we're already talking because I'm your buyer's agent, right? And I'm an important piece and I can explain that later. But really, the first call that I always tell people is call your mortgage professional. I also have some other tips on, everybody's like, well, my bank. Okay, your bank is only, I'm going to say what Amy can't advocate for herself on here, is that your bank is only going to offer you products that they have in-house. A mortgage professional like Amy is going to be able to offer you an array of different products at Citizen, right? And so don't be just thinking, oh, I have to call Bank of America because that's where all my money is. That's the only choice I have. You need to call around and make sure that you're not just saying, oh, well, they have my money. They're not going to give you the best deal. If anything, they give you some small credit, but I would say that it's really in your best interest to have these other conversations, and making sure that you're not just taking the product that is available at the bank where your money is, because I think that's a real big misstep that people make out the gate. And like I said, don't be calling Rocket or any of these places that are national AI platforms. It ends up being such a nightmare. And I feel like I've closed one deal that has ever, and it was it's so stressful for everybody involved. And the other thing then, when we're ready to put the offer in, we are going to send out an offer letter. And what I love for people to have already figured out is who their lawyer is going to be, because it shows that you are prepared. So another way showing that the to the seller that you're ready to go is showing that you've done your homework. And that's why it's so important to figure out who you're going to work with as a lawyer. And like I said, that you want to make sure you've got someone that's vetted, has been doing this a long time, and that you feel comfortable talking to, right? It's like the people that are on this call right now are people that it's easy to talk to them, that they explain things in terms that are digestible, and they don't use scare tactics, right? And so that's like a really important aspect for me of who we work with. And so that's why I like working with Christine, and I let her introduce it because I want to make sure that when we put in your offer, you've already talked to one or two people and you're like, this is the person I like working with. I talked to Christine. She's great. I feel comfortable with her. Let's put Christine down as our lawyer. And so, Christine, what happens on the first call when people call you to help them feel like this is the right choice for them?
So, one of the first things I do is I give all my buyers a roadmap of the process. Because as you've pointed out, Victoria, right, everyone talks about how stressful it could be to buy in New York. So, the more you know, the better. And, when it comes to buying, depending on what you're buying, there could be, some very, very different steps. So, I talk to people about what it means, particularly if they're not sure if they're looking at co-ops versus condos or a house, what it means, what some of the different closing costs are, what the different timeline is, right? A co-op will take a little bit longer to close than a condo or a house. For some people, especially if they're getting money as a gift from family or something, they might be thinking about buying in the name of a trust or an LLC. And that's a conversation that I like to have early on because, again, our friend, the co op, is not necessarily so flexible with different entities. Sometimes insurance companies are not so flexible. And some lenders would prefer that you buy in a name or, a trust versus an entity. So there are different factors to consider. And in that first call, I like to kind of address some of those and figure out exactly what people are thinking, but also to give them an idea. Like if you tell me your lease is out, June 1 and you're looking at, co-ops now, I'm going to tell you you're going to have to find, some interim housing because co-ops just don't move that quickly. And I want them to just be prepared and know what to expect going down, this process.
That's what we want you to do is be prepared, right? And I think that's what this call is about. And that's what talking to us right away now is going to help you do. So if it's not now and it's in a year, you are prepared. So talking to us right at this moment, and because you're on this call, you've taken the first step. You guys are on the right track and you're getting prepared. So after you assemble your team, right? I like to talk to people about why buy now. Okay, definitely we all know the rent's too high. You guys have your own design. Um, you know that you're going to be there for the long term. You're not going to have to be in an unstable position, right? And then you're building equity, right? You're building. I always say this is a classic real estate broker line. You're paying somebody's mortgage. It's either yours or your landlord's. Who do you want to be investing in? I want to be investing in myself. And I always like to tell this story about how I bought my house, which was 16 years ago at this point. And I had to get the first year I had a roommate, so I'd make sure I could pay my mortgage because had drained every bank account and every little thing I had. I I was so surprised I got the mortgage. But it was at the end of 2009 and I closed in January of 2010. So, I was still riding the financial crisis crash. And, I am so thankful because if you have a plan on to stay in New York City, it is the best thing you could do for yourself. My mortgage is less than most of the apartments I'm renting right now. And I don't even have a great mortgage rate. I'm paying 4.5. It's not like I even have one of those COVID rates. So just think about how, if you were still in New York in 10 years, what kind of security and knowing what your payment would be in comparison to how much it's changed. Like in those 16 years, it is egregious, and there's so many factors into that about how much rent is in comparison. So if you can get in the door now and you plan on staying here, you're going to be in a similar position. And you're going to be able to stay in New York and not be pushed out because I think that's what happens with a lot of people is that they wait too long. They're like, oh, well, I want to buy the perfect place. I did not. I was like, I'm selling this house in 5 years. And I'm now 16 years in. So because I was like, it's not my dream house. It's not, this is not it'll be a good temporary, it's my good starter house. I'm so thankful. It's way more house than I even need because just me and my husband and my dog. But it's getting your foot in the door so that you can be in the position to upgrade. Red Hook's very hard to upgrade in. There isn't a lot of things that I could move up, step up in. So I think that it's really important to just don't wait for the perfect thing. I always feel like people are like waiting for the market to crash or waiting to like New York City doesn't work like that. You just got to, when you have the money, like can make the and can pull the, take the next steps. I think it's important that you do so. So I'm going to send you something in the follow-up called the Rent to Buy Matrix. It's a New York Times link. Oh, I have it here. I could try to copy and paste it in my notes. But it will really help. You can put in the numbers here and then figure out like if you are in a rent stabilized or rent control apartment, it might not make sense if especially if you plan on staying there. So it really helps you figure out what the numbers are, and so you can calculate, okay, if I do stay here for the next 5 years, how much money am I giving to the landlord versus how much money could I be possibly saving and building equity? Because you're going to get that money back, right? Like the money you put towards the principal of your mortgage, you're going to see a return on that. You're never getting the money back from your landlord. Um, okay, so you're going to do this rent to buy matrix and you're going to be like, oh my God, I can afford something and it doesn't make sense to be renting anymore. So the first people you're going to call, right? We've already had a conversation. I'm the first person. But then you're going to call Amy and get your financing together. Then you're going to call Christine and you're going to be like, yes, this is the lawyer I want to work with. And then you might need some other people, right? At the time, once we put an offer in and it gets accepted, we're going to have to get an inspection done. I have a list of inspectors. Sometimes places need work. We're going to be able to recommend, contractors and architects you, but the three people you have to have are the three people on this call, and that's why we're here. Okay. So we kind of talked about this, right, Amy? I would say the one thing that sometimes people like to hear a little bit about is like, what are the steps if you own your own business or work for yourself?
Yes. So when you work for yourself, those are going to be the last two filed tax returns. So I do have a lot of, it's very, very common for people who are self-employed to file in October. And so at this point in the year, if you are, you're filing an extension, we just need a copy of that extension. But sometimes we want to show more income. Self-employed buyers tend to write a lot of things off. And sometimes we're like, we need to squeeze some more pennies out of this. So this time of year is actually a really good and really strategic time to be consulting, even if you think you're going to buy later in the year, because it impacts your purchasing power from now until next year, next April. So you're impacting your purchasing power. I had a couple that was buying that they had written off so much that they actually needed a parent to co-sign with them last year. Now, after that consult and not wanting to go that route, they took a different strategy with their taxes, their 2025 taxes, which they've already filed at this point, and now they can qualify by themselves. So having those conversations and understanding what that looks like and how that's impacting you is really, really important. If you haven't filed, be prepared to show a year-to-date profit and loss statement, a balance sheet, just to kind of get a sense of the health of your business because there is that lag time between the filed tax return and where you currently are, and making sure that your business income is at or above that last filed tax return. So those are the kinds of documents that you'll need, and kind of different ways that you can be savvy about it.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have that conversation before you file because I think that
Yes.
people, especially as a small business owner myself, we are trying to take as many deductibles as things. But I think that when I was buying my house, it definitely, wasn't optimal to have that kind of, bottom line there. So I think that, working with somebody that can help guide you on what you can do, and that sometimes you might just have to pay a little bit more to make yourself, look a little bit better to the banks. So I think it's an important, I think, a theme throughout all of this is communication and being honest and open about like, okay, this is what's going on. So that it's like with the lawyer, for if you were having kind of get arrested or something. You want to tell them everything so that they can help advocate for you in the best way. So without having the information, we're just not going to be able to guide you in the right way. So that's why it's important that you pick people that you like and trust and feel comfortable talking to. Okay, so you're ready. You've got your financing together. You're really ready to buy. And so now I ask people to think about some things. Some people are like, I only want to be in the neighborhood I already live in, right? Some people are still have leases, right? So what's your timing? And the one part of the budget is okay, yeah, we did the pre-approval, but what are you really comfortable with the monthlies being? Is this a building, a co-op or a condo, and are the monthlies really high? Like some things, co-op versus condo in the same neighborhood could be down $500 a month versus $2,000 a month, depend for the maintenance. And so I think that that's one of the things. Are you in the middle of your family in the process of growing? Are you already married and have a baby on the way? Like a lot of people, I think one of the things I always encourage people are like, well, we're going to have a baby in the next year. I'm like, well, the baby's not here yet. So we don't need to worry about school district till your baby's almost ready to go to the school. Let's worry about that, when the time has come, unless you already, are like, oh, it's next year. Because yeah, you're not going to move in a year to uplift your family, so it would be more important to have a good school district on the horizon like that. But schools grades change. They change rapidly. Funding changes. So just because you're buying something that's not an A school right now, it's a B school, doesn't mean it can't become an A school in the next year or two. It depends on many different factors. So, okay, and then lifestyle. Like, are you a runner? Do you always want to be close to Prospect Park because you want to be running every day? Like, these are things that we have to talk about, like your quality of life and how and the timing and budget and all these things to know like what our strategy is going to be. So and then once I know, oh, you have to have a doorman or an electronic doorman and you have to be by the park, okay, and you want to have pre-war details, okay, what I'm hearing is Prospect Heights because lots of co-ops with doormen with pre-war details near the park. That's how I sometimes get there if you're not so married to your where you're living now. Because amenities don't always line up, right? People want a gym in the building. That's probably not Prospect Heights, right? It's probably more Williamsburg. Go on. It's these new construction buildings. So trying to align up the amenities, the location, and then what's available in different neighborhoods is another conversation after we figure out, what your quality of life, parameters are. I'm sorry I talk so fast. Also, we have so much to cover. Okay, so where do you search? We set you up in our backend database, but I really still like Street Easy. I think it helps keep the riffraff off because they make you really enter the data in a certain way. I also have really just started liking homes.com, and they have some very specific parameters you can use. I would say I still have challenges with places like Redfin. Zillow, even though Zillow owns Street Easy, Zillow sometimes labels condos as co-ops and co-ops as condos and has missed, like, I don't know their tech. There's something broken with their tech. And they do have a lot of misinformation, and they let listings sit on there even though they've been sold for a really long time. And so I get frustrated about that. The other things I think are just no other. I mean, there's a lot of other sites, but I think they're just noise in the space. Those are the three that I really, homes.com, Street Easy, and then using our backend database because it's tied to the New York City MLS, the REBNY MLS, the Real Estate Board in New York. Up in here, somebody joining from their iPhone, which makes me scared. I'm like, Zoom bomber. Hi, welcome. Thanks for joining. So now, okay, if we went over where do you search? Let's see. Making an offer and negotiating the terms. So when I put in an offer, you're going to give me a couple things, which is a cover letter, an offer form, and your pre-approval. So that's why it's so important you've talked to Amy and you've gotten your pre-approval, right? And then a couple things can happen. If it's a listing that, has been on the market a couple weeks and it's not the first open house, they'll probably respond to our offer and we'll negotiate back and forth. If it's an open house where 30 other people showed up, which you all have seen those over the last couple of years, that has definitely happened. I've gone to open houses where there's been a line around the block. We might want to get your offer in really quickly. And so that's why the being prepared part is super important. And they might do, a best and final. So we'll put in our offer, we'll come in at asking, but there's 30 people there, so they probably underpriced it on purpose. That's part of a seller strategy sometimes. And being aware of that and understanding what the comps are. And making those not emotional decisions, but decisions based in, okay, will this appraise? That's an important part of putting in an offer. You don't want to be like, I'm going to offer $100,000 more and find this money somewhere. But then the bank's going to say, hey, it's not worth that much. We're not going to give you a loan for that amount. So those are things that we need to have discussion on. Like I said, there's so much information, but we'll go into detail about what your offer should look like and the things to consider at that time. I don't want to overwhelm you with all the different things. And then one of the other terms is as is, which is usually for resale stuff. And what contingencies, right? And so when I put in the offer, usually I'm asking for financing contingency and an inspection contingency. The inspection happens before we go into contract, but the financing contingency is so that if, God forbid, you lost your job or something, you'd get your deposit back. So I want to just kick it to Christine and say, are there other things that you are advising at this point in the process?
What I ask my clients when the deal sheet goes out, Victoria, or when when they've made an offer, is just to let me know if there's anything in particular that they've noted about the property or about their offer, right? And that's when they'll let me know if they've had certain conversations with Amy about how they want to structure their financing, if it is very competitive. And that's when I start kind of, we'll go into a little bit of the nuances of whether it's going to be financing contingent or not. If you're buying a condo or a house, I'll start talking about, title issues, right? Particularly if it's an older house. You may want to get a survey of the property. There might be, you know, in some parts of Brooklyn, there are shared driveways or, the garage is, in the road behind the house, but it's, all access. Quirky things like that about a property you want to talk about, or what might come up in inspections, right? Older houses tend to have slightly older electric, things like that. If you are in a co-op, this is when I give a heads up that, they need to take a look at the rules and they should take a look at the co-op application or if they're planning on renovations, to take a look at the alteration agreement just to get a sense of what it's going to be like. Like every building, every neighborhood has its own personality, and you want to make sure that there's a fit and that the buyers are going to be comfortable in that place. Um, and then certainly once that's squared away, I'm going to really dive deep into my due diligence, which is a whole other world of information. But, to begin with, those are the things that I would highlight.
And Amy, I usually encourage, buyers to run the address past you because we want to make sure there's no red flags, right?
Yes, so Citizens keeps a very robust database of all the buildings that we've lent in all over all the boroughs. And so the first thing I'm going to do is plug that address in and see if we've already lent there. Were there any issues? Did the building have something that required an exception? And then the next thing I'm doing is I'm hopping over to DOB and I'm looking to see like, do they have facade inspections that, ongoing work? Are there boiler issues? Is there, anything going on in that building that is going to put a specific product on or off the table for you? Because if I qualified you on a 30-year fix and I see that, that building is not going to meet Fannie Mae's guidelines, Fannie Mae is a backer of loans under 832,000. So it's going to be a lot of loans, right? And they're the go-to. And so if that's not compatible, I want to know that up front. I want to set your expectations, because then you're under a different program. They have different DTI rules. They have different regulations governing them. And so I got to make sure that if I qualified you under this one program, now I need to look at another. So it's really important to just, yeah, run the address by me so that I can get on top of it and make sure that that building is going to be compatible with what you were underwritten on. And also, particularly if you're even considering, waiving a contingency, that's always something you want to talk about with your lender and make sure that they feel comfortable that you've got some wiggle room in there, and that they feel solid about the building if you're buying a condo or a co-op. So just, yeah, so this is a great time to also like loop in and let them know, like, hey, I'm putting an offer in on this thing and just making sure that, we should be able to proceed here. So,
Yeah, you're on it. You're going to DOB. I love it. You're
oh,
going
I
deep.
am in
Yeah,
it.
I love the dig. Okay, I need to have you vet all my selling products. Okay, great. So what happens after that? Hopefully we come to something called the meeting of the minds where we negotiate back and forth and there's a number, right? And they accept it. And then, that's when we're now sending out contracts and other things. But that's also then when we're scheduling the inspection, right? And hopefully nothing happens at the inspection that we need to bring up. But sometimes, yeah, fingers crossed, right? But sometimes some small things come up, like an electrical outlet's not working, the toilet's running all the time, like silly small things. Those are so figure outable. The things that are really red flags are, oh, the roof's going to be need to be redone, and the selling broker didn't tell us, but it's going to be in the minutes, and there's an assessment, and we're just learning about it now. Those are the sort of things that we're like, oh, okay, that we weren't prepared for all of those things. So then if it's something that if they don't know about it and there isn't an assessment, but it's like, oh, the facade's going to have to get repointed in the next 5 years. And we look, oh, is that already planned? And we'll have Christine look and see in the minutes, like, is that on the agenda to be done? Is it already, do they have the money in the reserves to do it? Or are they going to be like, oh, we're going to ask all the co-op owners to, pool the funds because they don't want to raise the maintenance. These are the things, the conversations we have. So hopefully nothing happens. If something comes up that's not going to be covered by the building, like the hot water heater goes, you know, at the inspection for some reason, or there's a leak, right? What then we need to figure out how much it's going to cost, how invasive it'll be, how long it'll take, and if it's something that you want to deal with. Some first time home buyers are like, hey, that's out of my league. And this property is not for me because I need something that is turnkey and not a problem to solve. And some people are like, oh, this is negotiating power. I'm going to see how much money I can get out of this situation. And then, hopefully I'll get enough that'll make it worth the pain and suffering of having to deal with New York City contractors. But we have great ones to recommend. So they're not just like real estate brokers, there's good ones out there. You want to make sure that you're up for the task of doing that because some people are like, hey, we're going to close on this. We're going to have to go right back to school, right back to work, like move, get through this apartment. Like it's not in the cards for us. And that's a decision we'll have because we're never going to encourage you to take steps that you don't feel comfortable with. You need to feel comfortable. So if you want to walk away before you've given any money, you can do that but also realize we're doing this in a time frame when you are not locked in. So another buyer can swoop in and make a higher offer and want to move forward and push you out. The deal is not yours and the property is not yours. And you don't have to worry about anybody else until you sign and you put your deposit down. So if it takes a long time for us to go back and forth and do the inspection, your time kills deals, I always say. So you want to make sure that you're moving quickly and your team is moving quickly and helping you make that decision quickly. Because if you want to walk away, you can do it. Let's just not drag it out for 4 weeks. You want to be signing your contract within 10 days, is the rule of thumb. That's on the longer side. Quicker if we can get it turned around. So then once we've come to a meeting of the minds, we've negotiated all the things, you're ready to put your deposit down and sign the contract. That's when Christine's going to have you come into her office, or you're going to do a Zoom call and sign digitally now, thanks to COVID.
Yes, the power of DocuSign has been, the
Yeah.
great breakthrough uh, winner of the pandemic. Exactly as Victoria said, you're looking at, anywhere from 3 to 10 days to get all of this diligence done. And while I'm digging into that information, and if you're doing an inspection, Victoria is helping out on that. And I'm also going back and forth with the seller's attorney to get us to a final contract, which I will go over with you guys in detail, whether by Zoom, phone, in person, however you would like to do everything. And at that point, you guys are signing as the buyers and you're putting down the contract deposit, which is usually 10% of the purchase price. That money is held by the seller's attorney in their escrow account. It does not get released to the seller. It's just held as a deposit. That's what binds the contract. It's, how everyone knows you're serious. And only after that will seller countersign. And then you're officially in contract, like Victoria said, that's when everyone's committed. And I always tell people, you've got to stop going to open houses at that point. Stop shopping. We're going to turn our attention to the mortgage. You're going to give Amy all of the information she needs, including the fully executed contract. And if it is a co-op or condo, you're also going to start working on the building application. That's all simultaneous.
Yep.
And while you guys are doing that, I'm going to order your title report if it's a condo or a house. And that is to confirm by pulling all the public records that there are no liens or judgments against the property. The sellers really own the property and can sell to you, right? And it's not one of those bad 80s or 90s movies where you get like the knock on the door and it says, "Hi, I'm the long lost whoever, and I own, this house." Or here's a napkin, I won it in a poker game. Or half of your backyard is mine. All of those things. If there are any liens or judgments, if any quirks in the title show up, I'm going to work to clear them. Usually the only thing that comes up is that the seller has a mortgage too and that they have to pay it at closing, and that's fine. If you were buying a co-op, it's called a lien search, not a title report, but it's the same thing. It checks to make sure that there's nothing attached to the property that puts a financial or other obligation on you as the buyers when you become the owners. So that means all three of us are going to be working on parallel tracks once the contract is signed, right? Victoria's working on your building application, Amy's working on your loan application, and I'm working to make sure that you get, it's called clean and clear title, and that
Mhm.
there are no problems. And in a perfect world, in about 30 days, we're all going to converge and everyone's going to get the green light and we'll be able to close.
That's the goal, right? And I think that the other thing to realize is that, and now that we're getting to this point, you understand how important it is that you have good teammates because we all need to be in communication. And so when you have rapport between service providers, we could say, that we're gonna be able to hold each other accountable because we've done so many deals together. You know, I get to call Christine and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" Instead of like a random person. Like it's really frustrating when somebody picks a lawyer that is not going to communicate. One, I don't know them, which, you know, just sounds like not nice, but really it's about them not being communicative, right? They being difficult, them challenging, them like trying to negotiate or do things that are really not within what they're supposed to do. Especially if you hire your uncle, he feels protective of you and he's going to try to be a pit bull and do all these things for you. It ends up just making things worse. So that's why you want to pick people that are calm, cool, and collected and are helping facilitate your needs, and which is to help you buy this house and not getting in there and disrupting things. So the team members are really important for everybody's mental health. And yeah, Amy's like, yes. So after we've signed the contract, right? So Christine sends you the DocuSign. We send that contract immediately to Amy. And Amy's like, I got the contract. Now I can start working on your application. And I'm telling you, everybody's like, oh, I want to start working on my board package. No. The first thing you do is get everything that Amy asks for to Amy. Then once Amy has everything, and you've chased her down, and I've confirmed with her she's ordered the appraisal because I'm chasing her also going, did you order the appraisal? Did you order the appraisal? That's my job, right? That's when Amy, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so that's kind of like once we have that duly signed contract, it is off to the races. It is give me I've already looked at, your pay stubs, your W-2s, those sorts of things. Then we're just cleaning up, right? Like now, because you just sent that earnest money, we're gonna get a copy of the wire receipt. We're gonna, document that out and show where you got your funds from and those were seasoned and it was really yours, or we document the gift appropriately, all those sorts of things, because the more that we do up front, the cleaner our commitment letter is, the fewer conditions we have, the easier our path is to clear to close. And that's always the goal. The goal is always to get everything that we can possibly get up front. That way we get this really short little itty bitty list of here's what you need for clearance to close. As soon as I get that contract, I'm going to send you disclosures. It's like 70 pages of stuff, so you and I can talk about anything that you have questions about. It's pretty boilerplate, but still, people always have questions. Um, as soon as you sign those disclosures, that's when you get, your please send us your appraisal fee. That's the only thing that we charge up front. Other lenders are all different, but we don't charge an application fee that's collected up front or a rate lock fee. So you can get all that stuff taken care of and situated. But managing your rate lock around this time is an excellent thing to do and make sure that you have a good understanding of what your closing time frame is and maybe give yourselves a little bit of padding. But those are the types of things that as soon as we get that signed contract, appraisal, clean up docs and get you all scrubbed up ready for underwriting and manage that lock and that rate. So those are the things that we are going to be taking care of at that time.
Yeah, and we cannot submit your board package until if it's a co-op, until I have your commitment letter. I can't
Mhm.
get your commitment letter until Amy has all the documents she needs to get the commitment letter. So there is a chain of events, right? And so I know it gets very like, oh, I want to get, you can start working on your reference list, but really the priority is making sure we have the commitment letter so we can actually submit your board package. And there's two ways. There's some boards that, you're still making hundreds of copies of paper and they are just antiquated. And there's some people that has an online platform that's making everything really beautiful and easy. And it's a gamble and you just don't know. And just because you have one or the other doesn't make it better. Because some old school analog boards are way better than these ones that have hired management companies that nobody's responsive at. So it's our job to be staying on top of everybody to make sure everything's moving forward and smoothly. So if I'm not hearing back about board questions or anything like that, it's my job, especially to work with Christine and Amy to make sure the questionnaires and the answers we're getting so we have the information for the next step is really important. So then I'm working on your co-op package. Then we're submitting your co-op package and hopefully I've only had one co-op rejection in the whole 21 years that I've ever done real estate. Yeah, I know. And it wasn't we didn't even get to the interview. It was a very silly thing that happened. We are prepping you for your interview because there is now this very old school, interview because in a co-op you're buying shares with people and you guys are going to be making decisions together, like you own a company together, and they want to make sure you're of sound mind and not going to come in and gum up the works, right? So it's usually pretty, straightforward. I would say that Brooklyn, which is I'm doing a majority of my deals. Yes, I've sold some things in Manhattan here and there, but I would say majority Brooklyn is my bread and butter, and that's where my expertise really comes in. So you're not really getting these strict co-op boards like you have in Manhattan, that can just really like have an interview that you're scared for, worse than any job interview you've ever had, as they say. So, and then they, after the next day, hopefully, or that night, are saying you're approved. They have to send in an official piece of paper saying that you're approved. And then the bank can start working on getting you something called clear to close. Amy, Christine, you want to jump in for clear to close and next steps?
Sure, I'll hop in. So as soon as you have gotten your clearance to close, we celebrate and do a little dance, and then we really get down to business, right? We look at, what have you got left to do? Let's get so we know more or less once you've got that approval. By the time there's a lot of people in a co-op closing, right? So that's a big group of people to get scheduled. We know we've got more or less about 2 weeks from that approval, to kind of get you scheduled, get you cleared, get everything ready to go. So that's we're gonna cross our T's, dot our I's. We're gonna make sure your homeowner's insurance is in place. If you're setting up auto pay, that's done. Kind of all the little itty bitty things that we take care of as we're going across the finish line. And then you submit your stuff. We will talk with Christine. We're gonna get all the numbers hammered out, kind of final figures, and get those over to you. And then you get to close. So it's usually at that point when you've done a really good job prepping and get that clean commitment up front. It's a pretty quick downhill process from there, and it should be relatively stress-free for you, and it should be exciting and celebratory. So.
Absolutely. Usually at this stage, it's a little bit of waiting for the co-op and condo to issue all the documents. There are certain closing documents that we would need from them. We being Amy and I primarily. They need to verify that, the seller hasn't been violating any rules, that they've been paying up on time, that there are no arrears. We need the official consent or the official waiver. And that's all relatively standard. But it does take, building management a few days to kind of do all of that work. And then in the meantime, I'm coordinating with management as well as with the seller side to make sure that everyone is ready to close. New York City, for the most part, is still pretty old school, and we have our closings in person. I mean, literally, we all sit in a room together in a conference room. Amy is going to send someone. If it's a co-op, the co-op has someone there. Seller will be there with their attorney. You'll be there with me, and we're all going to sign 100 pages of documents. It's all going to go around in a circle. Um, Condos usually don't come, but then we have to wait for them to send us all the documents. But everyone else still comes. You know, if something happens, if you're away on vacation, if work really does not permit you to be at the closing in person, we can always work something out. You can give somebody power of attorney. It could be me, it could be significant other who you're buying with. And we can kind of coordinate things. Personally, I think it's fun to come to the closing. You get your keys. It's, like Amy said, it's a little bit of a celebratory moment.
The climax. You're
Um,
finally there. It's like, oh my God, I'm gonna get the keys and own this
yeah,
house, and it's my responsibility now. So it is,
right.
I feel like it is part of like the journey. You want to be there. It's not like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. Then
Yeah,
you probably was not that significant for you if this is your like
right, right.
100th house.
Exactly. You go home with a copy of the deed or your stock certificate. If it's a co-op, usually there's some kind of welcome letter from the co-op, right? That tells you like, how to contact the super to arrange your move-in and stuff. Like, and it's also your opportunity to ask last minute questions of the sellers if they're there, that you can sit and be like, okay, tell me, is FiOS really better than Spectrum in this building? Like, what's the deal? Right? Or whatever it is, right? Like,
I think
do
it's
I
so nice,
haggle and try to
especially
get
if
a
you've
better
had a great
storage?
transaction. Yeah.
Right. I mean, like that's when you start like really kind of asking like the nitty-gritty stuff, right?
It gives you
So
that opportunity that you haven't had before because you're not in communication, right? And so this is the one opportunity. And that maybe they'll even offer you their number or something like, hey, be in touch in the future, which is so lovely. If you have
Mhm.
questions about the building or something like that. So it's your real
Yeah.
opportunity to like make that
Right.
relation.
Yeah. And I mean, and some sellers are really great. Like they'll say, "Oh, we repainted the living room and there's half a gallon of paint left. We left it for you so at least you could match the color if you want to do something." Or, we used whoever contractor and we redid one of the bathrooms but not the other, so if you want to use the same person, they have all of our plans, they know every brand and model of fixture. I've seen a lot of that kind of discussion collaboration happen at the closing table. But most importantly, at the end of it, you guys will get keys, you
Yeah.
will be homeowners,
Yes.
and
And
you'll have
24
like
hours.
100 pages of documents that I'm
Yeah.
going to scan to you as a gift.
Yeah.
But,
And
that
the,
aside,
and then a hard copy that you lose somewhere.
right, right. That's why I try to scan, and then that way at least,
You'll have
Gmail
it somewhere.
remember
Yeah,
it
Gmail will
forever.
remember forever.
E- Exactly.
24 hours before the closing, we're doing something called the final walkthrough to make sure the house and property are being delivered in the condition that we want to. And then we do all find a date that we all walk through. And then I'd like to just remind people not to schedule their move on the date of their closing. You have avoided stress as much as possible up until this point. Why would you do that to yourself? And it is always very stressful if someone's like, oh my God, the movers, the movers, the movers. Like you're just focused on that happening next. And unless it's actually on the 31st or 1st, like just give yourself the grace period of not making the very end, chaotic. So we have 5 minutes left. I want to open it up for questions and I want to give, is there anything, Amy or Christine, here at the end that you wanted to chime in about before we take questions and then do our conclusion? And is there anybody that's going to actually ask questions? Oh,
There've been
somebody
a,
asked.
there've been a few
Oh, once
questions on the
approved.
chat.
Great. Yeah. Once approved, pre-approved, how long is that valid for? 120 days, at least at Citizen.
So, and a lot of times that's enough time to, go ahead and find your property. And then a typical, say, co-op, right, which is on the long run of things, is 60 to 90. So generally, that pre-approval, if you're starting in a serious place, it should cover you pretty much the throughout the entire transaction. So.
Other
And
questions? You guys can take yourself off mute. Okay, go ahead, Christine. Sorry.
I just really wanted to emphasize, like, we went through the process very quickly,
Yeah.
but, the three of us, throughout the entire process on behalf of our clients, we are very mindful of all the deadlines and we are constantly in contact with one another. So,
Mhm.
for example, if you have 30 days to get a commitment letter, around day 20, I start bothering Amy. I start asking, hey, how's it going? Do you have any questions? Like, you know, and sometimes, like, she'll say, I'm not hearing back from management. And I'll be like, I've been calling Beth. Do you have Beth's number? Let me give you her number. Like, this is, who my contact is. So we make sure that everything is progressing. If we do need a little bit more time, and sometimes that happens, especially around the holidays, Amy will tell me, I'm going to call the seller side and say, look, the bank needs 5 more days. The bank needs 7 more days because so and so's been away, or this happened right before Thanksgiving. And it's usually not a problem. Um, but, we are all like very mindful of the process and all the interim steps. And we try to make sure that, you know, it never gets to the point where it's the day of and we're either not ready or we need to suddenly ask for an extension. So if anything, there'll be too many emails or calls from us, but uh, you know, we do that so that we make sure that everyone's aware of what's going on and that everyone's, moving forward as efficiently as possible in this process for you.
Kwame has one more question, which is going back to cash post closing. Is there a percentage of mortgage money amount that lenders typically like to see? There is also what the buildings like to see too for co-op, but I'm going to let Amy answer the question.
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to this earlier that usually a co-op is actually going to want more money than the bank. And the answer to that, it depends on what you do for a living and how much of if you're self-employed, or how much of your total compensation is variable. So that's in the form of like commission or a bonus or whatever. So the more variable your income is, or if you're self-employed, the bank is going to want to see more reserves. Typically the max sort of cutoff is 12 months, so that's usually the most that they'll ask for. And retirement does count. So if you got a really healthy 401k, but you drained all of your liquid stuff, that's going to be okay for the bank. That is not necessarily going to be okay for the co-op. So I will let Victoria address.
So it depends on the co-op, but oh God, and the number is escaping me right now, but I want to say what is it, 25% post-closing liquidity? Is that the is it or it's no, sorry. It's sorry, I'm trying to think of the debt to income ratio that they also ask for. So the post-closing liquidity, it depends on the board. Sometimes it's 12 months of maintenance payments and sometimes it's 12 months of maintenance plus mortgage payments. It depends on how strict they are. And then they like to see a debt to income ratio. Somebody tell me what the number is again. I thought I'm
Usually 30 is like the
okay,
most
30.
common that I
Yeah.
see. Yeah. But the good thing about that is that the co-op doesn't qualify in the same way that the bank does. So while I might be like discounting your bonus or, averaging something, the co-op is going to look at something on its face value. I might not be able to include self-employment income for your side gig because you've only been doing it for 18 months, but the co-op will consider that. So there's different, you might have a very different DTI with the bank than you do with the co-op. So those are other just kind of, and that's why it's really important to like work with Victoria on your board package while you're working with me on your, and making sure that everything is sort of aligned and doing that work up front, so that everything is ready and you're prepared to meet those, that we know what those standards are and that you're prepared to meet them.
Yeah. Other questions, Kwame? These are great questions. Thank you for asking them. You can also take yourself off. Oh, you said no. They said nope. Great.
Oh, no, I don't. Sorry.
Yeah, you can take yourself off mute. Um, but those were really great questions. And so I'd like to just close it out by saying, please though get in touch with us. We're happy to jump on a phone call and hear about what's happening. Like I said, it doesn't have to be now. It can be, in a couple months, in a couple years. Sometimes the longest I worked with someone was 5 years. It was so long. But we got there, and there's sometimes that's what it takes. And there's also resources on savings and things you can do, by talking to Amy, you might learn that, oh, I can borrow against my 401k, or I can get this gift from my parents and I have to do it now and just then wait 3 months. And there's like lots of inventive things you can do. And I would say I'd be really scrappy about it. That's how I got my foot in the door. I was in a car accident. I took my payout from the car accident. I sold my old engagement ring. I did all of these crazy things. And I did have to have my parents co-sign because I own my own business. And it was just like, hey, we're not going to give you a mortgage, even though you have the money, because I just didn't, my paperwork didn't look good. But my mom, I got my, after like that, I had my mom sign something saying like she didn't have any legal, bearing to the house if something happened, and we signed something so that God forbid anything happened, that, that was there. So, but I did need her. I needed her, and that's what it's nice to be like, some people, a lot of people don't have it, but if you do have it, I would say take advantage of it. If you can be amicable with your family, write things down, have them in writing so that they don't be like, well, I gave you that loan. Why aren't you coming to the baby shower on Sunday? Because I know also that is a thing that I've heard clients be like, oh my God, I couldn't let my mother have that power over me. I'm like, well, just put it in writing so she knows what the boundaries are, for these situations. Because I think it's important if you have people that are offering to help you, don't be scared in this world to take help, because that's what we're offering also. Okay, guys, you'll get a follow-up email in the next 24 hours. Be on the lookout for it. We'll have lots of value-added resources for you to help you kick this process off. And like I said, there'll be a link to schedule calls with us. And I hope you guys do. I'm looking forward to meeting you in real life.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay,
You.
All right.
I'm going to stop sharing and stop recording.
All right.